So my name is Rachelle Norberg. I'm an attorney in Burke, South Dakota, which is about 45 minutes straight south of Chamberlain. Um, Town of about 650 people. I've been here for about 4 years. And my practice areas include I do a lot of real estate work, estate planning, trust and estate administration, and business formation. So I've done, I think, 5 nonprofits, done like 5 applications for different nonprofits in our area. And I've got a 6th one that I think I'm going to be starting in the near future. So I've got a little bit of experience and gotten to do them kind of across the board of different things they do. So Laura asked if I would kind of visit with you guys a little bit about what the difference is between a nonprofit and a 501c3, and then also kind of talk a little bit about the differences between a 501c3 and a 501c6. So I guess probably kind of to start. So a nonprofit is a corporation. So it's a separate legal entity that's created by individuals or by other corporations. And that entity is created, it's a not-for-profit, or it's not a corporation that is generating money that then pays shareholders. So a nonprofit status comes from whichever state the corporation is going to be located in. So if you're in South Dakota, you file paperwork with the Secretary of State out of Pierre, which for most of them you can do online now, which is great. You don't have to mail documents anymore and have to get original signatures, and it's great. And you file that with the state, and if you meet their qualifications, they grant you and accept you as a nonprofit corporation in the state of South Dakota. So a nonprofit can generally, it goes across multiple different areas, goes across different goals for the corporation. But the main responsibility, or the main requirement to become a nonprofit and be able to register as one at a state level is you have to be forming for a charitable, educational, religious, literary, or scientific purpose. And that is your main focus when you open and designate your corporation. So that is what you kind of, a really Cliff Notes version. That's what a nonprofit corporation is. You are applying within the state that you're operating with, and that state grants you the title of a nonprofit. A 501c3 is a nonprofit that has applied with the IRS to become exempt from income tax. So you have to become a nonprofit. You have to be a registered nonprofit corporation in order to apply for a 501c3 status. With the exception, you can also be kind of like a certain type, like a charity trust, which is a lot different, but that's still, like, you could file to become exempt from income tax under that, but it's really rare to see people do that. But to gain 501c3 status, you have to file with the IRS, and you provide copies of your documentation showing that a state has granted you the status of a nonprofit corporation. You have to list out who your directors are, list out where your offices are located, where you do business if it's across multiple states. And you have to provide your have to specify like how you qualify as a 501c3. So if you're for a charitable purpose, educational, religious, literary, or that scientific purpose. And there's a big list that you can go in and search, and A lot of them are really similar. So if you don't pick the exact right one, like they will review everything and they'll give you whatever they say that you're exempt under. But when you apply for that 501c3 status, you are asking the IRS and saying, we are a corporation that our goal is charitable type work. And for that reason, we're asking you not to assess us with income tax. Because without that 501c3 status, legally corporations, even if you're a nonprofit, are supposed to file income tax returns. So the IRS will then review your application, depending on how large of a nonprofit you are or how long you waited to file. Will depend on what type of form you fill out with the IRS. It's much easier to do it at the front end of forming a nonprofit corporation than it is to wait 10 years to do it, but sometimes it happens that way. And the IRS will review that application. They may request additional information on some things, but then they ultimately make a determination if you meet their qualifications to be considered a 501c3 or exempt from income tax. If you are granted that 501c3 status, you also can receive charitable contributions from individuals, from other corporations, from limited liability companies, from trusts that are tax deductible for the person making the contribution. So most, at least a lot of the, kind of smaller nonprofits that I've seen in our area, not all of them have 501c3 status, but the IRS isn't necessarily concerned about going out and if you made $10,000 for, through a pancake or breakfast feed for your local youth organization for like club soccer or club baseball, they're probably not really going to come after you and require you to go file income tax on that. But without that 501c3 status, people that contribute to those nonprofits can't make deductions on their income tax. So not only is it a benefit that you're not having to pay income tax as a nonprofit, but people that make donations to you can deduct it on their income tax return as a charitable contribution and lower their overall income level and reduce the amount of tax that they're going to pay to the IRS, which can be really significant for people that are in higher tax brackets. They can make very large contributions that can essentially run some nonprofits for years and years and years. So I see more nonprofits wanting to file so that their donors can deduct their contributions than I do because they're worried about having to file income tax returns. Because a lot of times the misconception that I hear a lot of times from people is, well, we're a nonprofit, we don't have to file income tax. And it's like, well, no, technically no, because you have to be a 501c3 to not have to file income tax, or not to supposed to have to file income tax returns. So you can be a nonprofit and not be a 501c3, but almost always you have to be a nonprofit in order to be a 501c3.
Can you go over for a nonprofit that is not a 501c3, what do they need to do for taxes?
So they would need to file an annual income tax return, just like individuals do, just like a for-profit business would have to do.
Okay, so we had one question sent in about when they submit their 990, do they need to wait until they're an official nonprofit to do that?
So a 990 is the return that you have to submit to the IRS each year if you're granted 501c3 status. showing, depending what your total contributions were for the year. The form gets more detailed the more money you bring in. But that 990 is a report you have to do each year to send to the IRS to confirm, like, yes, we are still operating as a nonprofit and as a 501c3, so that they have a way to kind of track that. And so there's different categories of a 1023 is the form you file with the IRS to become a 501c3. There are different levels of that form depending on how large you are and when you file. So if you're a brand new nonprofit and you decide, nope, we're going to file for 501c3 status right away, we're not going to wait, we're going to file for it right away. One, your attorney will be really happy that you do that because it's much easier to file right away. And it's a much quicker turnaround time on how soon you hear back if you've been approved or not. And the form itself, the application itself, is a lot less time, not time sensitive, but it's a lot less time consuming. And usually they're not requesting as much information because you're brand new. You don't have financial records to provide them. You don't have a lot of things that they may look for in trying to figure out why someone didn't apply right away. So that 990 is then like the corresponding, like at the end of the year, it essentially takes the place of your income tax return. But you still file it through the IRS every year to say, yes, we're still active. We still want to receive 501c3 status. We still want to be able to accept charitable contributions. Depending on when you file for status, right now the IRS is the wait period to determine if you have been approved or not can range from 6 months to like 18 months. So that 990, I would recommend that, yes, you still complete it if they give you the option to complete it, even if you haven't received status yet, because they will make your approval retroactive to the date that you applied. So if you apply June 1st, but maybe you were a nonprofit established for 5 years, you're going to have a more extensive form to file with your 1023 to the IRS because you've been established longer, you've got more going on than a nonprofit that's brand new. And it may take the IRS until after the first of the year to review your submission and approve your application and provide a determination that, yes, you are going to be considered you fall under the 501c3 exemptions. But if they give you the option to fill out that 990, yes, absolutely fill it out, because that report is still due, and it's due April 15th, just like regular returns are for income tax for individual people, unless you're a farmer when yours are due earlier. But April 15th is that cutoff day. And so you want to submit it. There's still like a grace type period where you don't lose your status right away if you don't file by April 15th of a certain year. But you want to make sure you stay on top of that, because once you lose that status, you have to go back and you have to reapply all over again in order to retain and receive that 501c3 status again.
So for a farmer's market, what would you say is the advantage of becoming a 501c3 instead of a nonprofit?
So the advantage to me, if you have a farmer's market, is you would qualify as a nonprofit corporation if you wanted to register in South Dakota. So you would qualify for that, and the state would approve you to become a nonprofit under their guidelines. The benefit of applying with the IRS that you want to be considered a nonprofit is that you can receive charitable contributions. So if you have, a lot of farmers markets don't have a designated space that they own. They might rent a place, or they use a parking lot, or they use a park or some public place. But if you want to grow your market, and eventually your goal may be to own a specific space, to have your market, to either be able to have it more frequently or for longer periods of time throughout the year, or maybe even year round, you would be able to receive contributions that are tax deductible to the person contributing the money, which allows you to generate more for funds that you're going to raise for projects like that. Or if you want to, and that goes for kind of any type of equipment or products that you're using in order to facilitate the move.
Our market is a state nonprofit and has been for quite a long time, and we're applying for 501 status. And in looking at it, we are planning to apply for a C6 status, feeling that that was more accurate to the purpose of our farmers market, that it would be difficult to justify the charitable or educational as our primary purpose, even though we do a fair amount of that. And then we were planning to just continue using a fiscal sponsor for some of our fundraising types of things. Does that sound, would you agree with that, I guess?
Depending, so without knowing probably a little bit more about your specific market, I think a 501c6 is definitely an option for a farmer's market if you don't feel you meet the qualifications of a 501c3. So a 501c6 is, it's still a nonprofit corporation at the state level, but then the designation that the IRS gives is to promote a common business purpose. So I think a farmer's market could fit if you have your vendors that are actually serving as your, that's kind of what you consider your membership to be. The other, something that's really common that you see a lot of 501c6 designations too are like Chamber of Commerce at the city level, economic development groups, where they are a nonprofit. They're not, your shareholders or your members are not making money off of the corporation, but you're using that to promote business venture or to promote common business interests.
And I would say that that's probably accurate to most of the farmers markets generally. There might be a few exceptions in South Dakota, but I couldn't find anywhere online in working on our application. Another benefit as the person doing the paperwork of the C6 is it's a smaller form. I just gotta say, I like the smaller form. But I couldn't find like a model online for farmers markets applying for like the descriptive paragraphs for the form. Are you aware of anything, any kind of resource like that?
Not off the top of my head, I'm not. I do know that applications themselves are not generally available to the public. If you're applying on the 501c3 side, you are able to go in and view and see, based on zip code, city, state, who is a nonprofit and who's received that status from the IRS. And depending on how old of a nonprofit it is, they may actually have where you can print off the form that says, yep, this is what, they got their determination in July of 2021, they're a nonprofit, so that you have that as someone who's maybe interested in making a donation. So I know, like, I think it's going to be really hard to find, another farmer's market application for the 501c6. And I think it's a 1024 is that. I think it's just one number. A C3 is 1023 is the name of the number of the form. 501c6 is 1024, I believe. But I can't imagine that there's not some examples out there.
Any other questions? But if not, I'll send out the recording of this. So if anyone came in late and you missed the beginning, I'll send that out. Otherwise, Rachelle, do you have any last minute comments?
I don't think so. Thanks for letting me speak to you guys today. Hopefully I answered a few questions, and good luck to everybody. I love our local farmers market, and I never get down there early enough, and I miss out on my favorite things all the time. And that just is a really good thing because it means that they're popular in our area and they're just going to continue to grow. So
Thank you so much.